necessary to allow it.
Okay. All right. That's the end of new bills. So we're on to page 14, legislation provided for discussion, and we'll start with SB 982.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is a bill that the board will be familiar with to some degree. It's legislation that would authorize a casino in Fairfax County. As the board is well aware, there have been bills the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, legislation was introduced and then pulled pretty quickly. Last year, we did have quite a bit of discussion here about that, and the General Assembly had a lot of discussion. Ultimately, in the Senate, it was decided not to move forward with the bill. Last year, there was obviously quite a lot of opposition and feedback from county residents to a number of legislators. At that time, the board sent a letter to the General Assembly, which is included in your packets for your reference, just because that's the position that the board kind of discussed and staked out last year. This year's bill is largely the same with some changes. The location of the proposed casino would be probably more specific than what was included in last year. So some of the parameters are the same, near a Silver Line, near a mall, which is like Tyson's Corner Mall. But now it also includes a project that would be a mixed-use development of at least 1.5 million square feet. And so it has sort of tightened the group of, or the area that this could really exist in. It also would require the county to put a referendum out there, and so does not change the revenue split, which is one of the things that the board talked quite a bit about last year, the split for the state versus what the county would get under this proposal. So we've included it here for discussion. It has not been heard anywhere yet, and the board doesn't necessarily have to take a new position. You've certainly staked out one, but we wanted to talk through it a little bit with you all. I will also say that in your packets, the governor made some comments this week publicly about his sort of lack of interest in a casino proposal until there's a gaming commission that's stood up. And so there was a study that came out of last year's session relative to a gaming commission. They met quite a lot. They reported out over the summer. And yesterday there was a presentation in one of the committees, or maybe 2 days ago, in one of the committees about sort of the overview of that commission. And so just because those issues are a little bit related, it is included in your packets, again, for your reference. We weren't going to walk through it, but we wanted you all to kind of see what they're talking about in terms of this commission.
Okay. Supervisor Aqua?
Yeah, just very quickly, the letter makes it clear we never asked for this. I've been to Richmond to oppose this personally, as has Supervisor Bierman. Just a quick question for the county attorney. Last year, in the legislation that was initially introduced, had some provisions relating to labor. It had, for example, provision about authorizing labor peace agreements with one or more labor organizations for employees in the gaming or hospitality industries. Absent that kind of, and that's no longer in any of the bills, absent that kind of authorization, if, God forbid, we ever get to the point where this is on our doorstep and we are looking to select an operator, a casino operator, as the rest of the law talks about, would we be able to require such labor provisions in any sort of procurement?
As you know, Virginia is a Dillon Rule state, and our authority largely derives from whatever the state conveys upon us through state legislation. And so in the absence of a provision allowing for such labor practices, we would have to examine closely whether the locality, Fairfax County, had the authority to require those measures.
Okay. Well, that language is no longer there. So anyway, all right. Thank you for answering that.
Okay, Supervisor Bierman?
So I'm looking at the letter from last year, and we say that that Fairfax did not seek such authority. Just want to ask a question. Did we seek authority this time?
We did not. Supervisor Bureau.
And there's also something in the letter last year about how we haven't been substantively involved in the development of the casino concept. Were we substantively involved in the development of the casino concept this time?
No.
And last year, where he said it likely comes as no surprise to you that the location concept and reported has generated significant community concern and opposition. And we talked later about how it's close proximity to the Silver Line, to our 4 Silver Line metros. Has the location and concept become more expansive or even less expansive?
I think it's become less expansive.
Yeah, I do too. And last year we talked about how, as the law stands, the Commonwealth would receive over 70% of gaming tax revenue generated by Fairfax County Casino, which was relevant given that the location can generate significant local tax revenue without a casino. And we said that we did not believe that our residents would accept the revenue share prescribed in the current statute and the pending legislation. Has any change been occurred with respect to the percentages of gaming tax revenue?
No, the bill doesn't contain any changes. In that.
Yeah, didn't think so either. I think our letter's pretty clear. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Jimmy, because I particularly love this letter since I signed it. But I think you're exactly right. Nothing really has changed, and so I think it would make sense for us to recirculate the letter. One thing that has changed, though, that is disturbing, and I think should be recognized in the letter, is I've seen several statements from, in this case, at least 2 senators in Richmond who suggest that this is a way to prevent future real estate tax increases that have burdened our residents. And I think we need to make it clear in here that real estate tax increases, at least in the last couple of years, have been to overcome the state's negligence in funding public education. And so I'm very concerned about the line of thinking here. And frankly, I'm increasingly concerned this could be a distraction away from all of the work on JLARC, that the state will suggest somehow that instead of adequately funding public education, they'll just sprinkle things around Virginia to different jurisdictions that they underfund and somehow suggest that magically is going to solve our problem. And so I'm very disturbed by that line of thinking, especially from legislators who absolutely know better. I don't even know where those words came from, but they were written on paper, attributed to 2 state senators who are very well aware of what the problems are with public education funding and why that burden is borne by our real estate taxpayers. And so I would suggest that we clarify that, point to JLARC and that being the driver of many of the real estate tax increases that they're concerned about, that it's totally within their authority to solve that problem for us unrelated to this, and then continue with the rest of the letter. There may be a couple tweaks in here that we might want to adjust now that we're a year further away, but I don't think substantively we need to adjust any of the criteria of our concerns that are in this letter, maybe just update it. So what I would suggest we do is make some modifications to this letter and perhaps recirculate it either at the next legislative committee meeting or at the next board meeting to us to once again send this. The last thing I will say is I've heard characterized in Richmond what the board's position is incorrectly by several people. This could not be any more clear. This has been our position now for a year. For a year, this has been our position. That has not changed. And so I think we need to clarify that with at least certain members of our delegation that seem to have not either don't remember getting this letter or have chosen to ignore it. So that would be my recommendation at this point, that we update the letter, circulate it to the board, and resubmit it.
Okay.